Hello, everybody. This is Di McQueen, and this is Healing Families Shattered by Addiction. Um, I thought today we would talk about a topic that was really, really difficult for me to understand and realize when I was facing, my family member that was in addiction. Um, I'm going to talk about enabling when helping actually hurts, because I always thought that that's something that would be really good. Why love alone isn't enough, and how to stop protecting the addiction instead of the person. I think this will be a really helpful one. It's not about trying to make someone feel like they are to blame for. It's more about self-reflection and understanding, what the differences are, what helping looks like, what enabling is. So today I really wanted to talk about one of the hardest words, I think, in family recovery, which is enabling. Most people really don't wake up in the morning and realize, I think I'll decide to enable the person I love. They do it because they're terrified. They're terrified the person is going to overdose. They're terrified the person is going to drink themselves to death. They're terrified they're going to become homeless, that they're going to lose their job, their relationships, that, they'll carry the guilt with them forever, that this is somehow their fault. I recognize today that enabling is really about weakness. It's really much more about fear. But back then, when I first, was in the middle of all of my stuff, I didn't really realize that what I was doing might be, doing something harmful to the person that I actually love and care about. So let's start off with something that is probably the most important part of all of this, which is define what enabling looks like. Basic, simple definition is enabling is removing the natural consequence of another person's unhealthy choices in a way that will continue the behavior, and it allows it to continue. Notice what's missing. Enabling is not loving, it is not supporting, it is not caring. It's protecting someone from the consequences that often motivate change. So let's talk about, you know, our goal, which is not to stop loving, right? Because in my mind, if I stop loving them, that means all these things. But if I understand exactly what I'm doing, it's going to change. So the goal, the family, when they think about that, they're thinking, if I stop helping, I'm going to abandon them. Actually, healthy love says, if I love you enough to stop participating in your addiction, maybe there will be a change. Examples of enabling so that most of us can understand what that looks like. Some examples are very obvious, right? Paying off drug debts, buying alcohol, giving money that will likely buy drugs. Like, in other words, when someone goes, hey, I need 20 bucks for, I'm hungry, I need that sandwich. I pretty much know that that's going towards something else. So instead, maybe I'll buy them that sandwich. Anyway, calling an employer with excuses, lying to other family members, posting bills repeatedly. Maybe the first time you think this will really make a change, but on the seventh or eighth time, maybe I realize I'm enabling. Cleaning up legal problems. Those are things that are pretty obvious, right? Let's talk about some things that aren't so obvious and might be a little bit more subtle. Constantly rescuing, making excuses, ignoring obvious lies, pretending everything is okay, fixing every crisis, shielding them from their own discomfort. Why do you think families enable? Let's talk about that for just a moment. That's where compassion does matter. Families usually enable because they're trying to reduce the pain. Sometimes in their loved one's pain, they feel like that's the only answer. Often it's their own pain, to be truthful. Common motivations include fear, guilt, shame, hope, obligation, love, their own anxiety, and wanting peace. So sometimes we enable because of those reasons, right? Because I'm so uncomfortable, I have to do something. If I give them this, I know it's going to be quiet for at least the next day and it's out of my hair. I'm afraid. right? Just the fear that we talked about. My own guilt because I yelled and screamed at him last night and I lost my mind. Again, these are not all bad things, but I have to start to determine whether or not, this is something that's going to actually keep their addiction alive or not. And recognizing that I'm also not the reason why they're doing what they're doing. Even if they want to try to pin it on me, it's not because of me. And that's something that most family members really have a hard time wrapping their head around. The cycle of enabling. Let me walk you through a pattern that you might see. The addiction creates a crisis, right? The family begins to rescue. The crisis goes away temporarily. The addicted person experiences very little consequence. The addiction continues. Another crisis occurs. The family rescues again. It's exhausting. And everyone begins to get trapped in that round that loop, round that loop. And somehow it gets deeper, more progressive, etc. And somehow one day you wake up going, I don't even know how I got here. I've completely lost myself in this person's complete continuous crises. And we see the loop and it gets bigger and broader and faster. So what might have started off as something that was intentional and maybe I really thought I was helping now becomes habitual and it's a real, cycle of what happens within a family system. Let's talk about the cost to the families. Enabling does not just affect the addicted person, it affects everybody. Here's what families often experience, myself included at that time: chronic anxiety. So the anxiety just becomes so intense that you are living that way and you don't even realize you're living that way. The financial strain. Let's not even go down that road. Literally to the tune of thousands, hundreds of thousands, tens of thousands, whatever. But when you start adding it up and you realize that, like, you could have bought a new house, you could have taken a trip around the world, you could have put another kid through college, whatever, it begins to really actually blow your mind. Emotional exhaustion, which is, I think, the one that most people really recognize that they're always tapped out. It's like, I just don't have another moment in me. I want to sit down. I want to go to sleep all the time. I'm just not present. I'm not anywhere around where most people are. The anger, we won't even begin to talk about the anger that most people experience, especially without any tools, right? The anger then turns into depression, right? Because I just am so exhausted, tired, tapped out, don't know what else to do. And I just want to pull the sheets over my head. I remember those days. I did that many times where I don't even want to get out of bed. I don't want to look at my life. I don't want to be a part of my life. When is this nightmare going to end? Etc. Because I didn't have any tools back then. Hypervigilance. We notice everything, right? They're a nanosecond off from calling. They're, a little bit more quiet today. I'm checking their eyes. I'm checking their phones. I'm checking this. I'm checking that. I might even be tracking them. Now we have the tracking option where you track them down and you know every move they make and where they've been and who they're with, etc. That hypervigilance is the cost to a family member. Loss of identity. And that one, I think I really understood. At some point, I woke up going like, there's a shell of a person here. And I didn't even know how I got here. Broken relationships, right? How many people? What's the cost of? What happens? And let's not even begin to talk about the poor health. Like, I stopped going to the dentist, to the doctor. I can't do that because I got to find out where they are, what they're doing. What if they do something in the house? What's going to happen? Because I'm going to take care of myself. Those are things that are very costly to the family of someone they're enabling. Eventually, life revolves about that one person. Everything revolves around that one person. Everything else disappears. And I do really mean that. It's absolutely tunnel vision. It's amazing how that happened, how it happened, and when it happened. So let's talk a little bit about the difference between what someone perceives as help and enabling. The distinction is incredibly helpful. So, for instance, let's talk about a few things. Helping encourages responsibility, enabling removes the responsibility. Letting them be responsible for their own actions is the best gift that we can give to someone. I can't make their choices for them, especially my adult people, right? Adult children, adult partners, whatever. That is their responsibility. So giving them permission to take responsibility for whatever action they choose to do, whether that means going to work, not going to work, that's their responsibility. Supporting recovery is helping. Supporting addiction is enabling. Helping has boundaries, healthy boundaries. The family member knows their boundaries, they set them, and they follow through. Enabling has few boundaries or no boundaries at all. Temporary assistance. Yes, they're sober now. I'm going to give them, 30 days in the house. I will pay for the first month of sober living. I will help them with their food, etc., their electric bills, but I'm going to pay them directly. Enabling, the endless rescue. You can stay here as long as you want. Oh, yeah, you had one mistake. I'm going to let you do that. Let's go over it and over it, right? We go back and forth. I do everything for them. I stop doing my life. I'm picking them up. I'm taking them all these places. That's not assistance. That's rescue, right? So a little bit goes a long way, and understanding, how does this affect my life? What do I need to do with this? Is it workable for me? Helping requires honesty. That's hard, right? I don't want to tell someone that I love that, this is the last time I'm going to do this. But if that's what I mean, say it, right? But mean it. The denial and the enabling is, I'm often in denial about what's going on, and I'm also not accepting my own responsibility in this whole thing. Helping promotes growth, right? The things that I learn in either, dealing with someone like a coach who helps you, family members, a counselor, Al-Anon meetings, etc., where you learn tools and techniques, and enabling prevents growth for the person. So helping is I give them the opportunity to grow and learn, and myself included, and enabling prevents growth for either one of us. So one question families can ask is what I'm doing making recovery easier or addiction easier? So our goal is to be on the recovery side, right? Rather than helping the addiction get bigger. Let's talk about healthy alternatives. Instead of enabling, say, I'll help you find a treatment place. Instead of paying the debts, offer to drive them to a counseling session. Instead of giving cash, I'll buy my groceries if the children are involved, and I will bring them to the house and give them to you. Instead of covering up for them, I'm going to tell the truth. Nope, they didn't come home last night, and I don't know where they are. Instead of rescuing, I allow the natural consequences of their actions. Really hard to do, really. The family often says, I feel guilty. I feel so guilty. Here's an important distinction. Guilt says I did something wrong. Sometimes what families are feeling isn't guilt, it's grief, right? It's sad. This is a sadness. They're grieving over the loss of the person that they remember. They're grieving over the future they imagine. They're grieving over the fact that love can't control addiction. And that is a big distinction. We think we are loving them more. If I just love them, I might love them to death. I'm going to give you a few questions for reflection. I think this is important. Invite listeners to ask themselves. So I'm inviting you to ask yourself, what am I afraid of? What would happen if I didn't rescue them? What emotions am I trying to manage? That's mine and theirs, by the way. What am I trying to do? And mine, I really just have to give myself permission to feel them. Hint, right? I just have to give myself permission to feel them. I don't necessarily need to judge it. And theirs, I don't get to control their emotion. That's something I had to learn, which was whatever I do has nothing to do with what the other person feels, and what they feel, and it's okay. Another question. Am I helping recovery or am I helping the addiction? And what I need to figure out is if I don't know that, I need to talk to someone about it and figure out, am I helping the addiction? And if so, what do I need to do to stop that? What boundaries have I avoided because of fear? Right? Those are big ones because that's where, the fear drives a lot of us. Like if, for instance, I set a boundary that says, if you use again, you're not allowed to come to this house. My fear goes right to, oh my God, they'll be living on a park bench. They're going to get mugged. They're going to get raped. They're going to get killed. All of that may end up happening, but it may not, right? It's amazing what, people can do and the resources that are available out there and how many addicts and alcoholics have been able to figure that out. Another question, and the last one I'm going to ask you guys today is what would healthy love look like? What would healthy love look like? Because I didn't know what healthy love was. All I knew was that I was fear driven and I was doing anything and everything to help this person avoid the actual consequences of their actions and behavior. It was actually an addict friend of mine that said to me, you're going to love that man to death. He's going to die because every time you do one of these things, you put another nail in his coffin. And that was like what shook me to the core, going, what? Me, I'm the good one. Remember, I'm the one doing all these nice things for him. And in fact, what I was doing was protecting him from himself and from his own addiction. And unfortunately, never really had to deal with consequences until I finally got strong enough and understood and knew, I had to learn some tools. I had to learn what a boundary looked like. I didn't know what that was. So think about that when you next time you're about to make a decision to do something which you might think is helpful, question yourself. Recovery doesn't begin when the addict person until the addict person changes. Often the recovery begins for the family when they begin to change, right? Your decision doesn't necessarily mean that the person is going to make a difference in their life or do something different. And ultimately, they may make a choice to, you know, go one too many times around and they may end up ultimately having the worst outcome, but they may, and lots do, end up because of our decisions to stop enabling, make a choice to do something different and they have a positive outcome. When families stop trying to control addiction and start caring for themselves, it's amazing. Something remarkable happens. I know in my world, everything began to change. It was like unbelievable to find peace. For the first time in many, many years, I could lay my head down and go to sleep at night and not worry, right? And not be going, oh my God, where is he? What's he doing? What's happening? Sometimes this can then lead to the addict person or the addicted person to go or request recovery. When it comes from within, they may actually do it. Sometimes they don't. We don't know. But either way, you can get better, right? The family can no longer lose themselves in all of this chaos. Remember this: love does not require rescue. Compassion doesn't require enabling. And healthy boundaries aren't punishment. They're one of the greatest gifts you can offer both to yourself and the person you love. I hope this is helpful and certainly understand that if you have questions, you can go to www.familyandAddictionExperts.com. Sorry, a little tongue tied there. And on there, you are welcome to send us, a subjective form. We can meet with you for a half an hour and just talk it through a little bit. You are welcome to email us at Family and Addiction Experts, info at Family and Addiction Experts.com. Please, we love questions. We love to help. We love to see if we can guide you in a direction. If it's not us that can help you, we will certainly try to get you to a place where you can be helped. Get to an Al Anon meeting, talk to a friend that has experienced this before. I really feel like it's one of those most important topics. one of the key factors that when I learned that I was doing so much more enabling than helping, I was able to start to give myself permission to change. And it's a really important part of this whole recovery process. Doesn't mean your addict is going to do anything different, but you certainly can. I hope this was helpful. And again, this is Healing Families Shattered by Addictions. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day.